All right, y'all. Before we drop into this delicious episode that I recorded with my bestie Quinn this week, I wanted to let you guys know just a little bit of housekeeping around the Substack. While my assistant Alex and I tried to move over all of our previous podcast episodes, which there are a lot of them, y'all, 72 episodes. How amazing is that? We discovered that just logistically, it was going to be really, really complicated and actually mess up all of our timestamps to put those previous episodes behind more of the subscription format like I'd originally intended. I was going to make all of those an archive that was only accessible to subscribers. And turns out the universe had a very different idea in mind. So I am honestly delighted. I really do feel like this is much more aligned. And the universe just takes you where you're meant to be, which is announcing that all of the episodes pre our Substack move will forever remain open. And that means that that archive is just like it was from the beginning, a gift that I was just giving freely to the world. It will remain that way. And I really do feel when this whole thing went down, just a strong impression that that's what's meant to be. So, contrary to what I'd said when I launched the Substack last week, that was going to be a part of what you would get becoming a subscriber, that previous archive of those 72 episodes will always remain open forever after. So that's really beautiful. And it will just be the podcasts going forward. As you'll see when you go to subscribe, every episode on the first week of the month will be wide open and free, but the remaining 3 that come out in the weeks after will go into a Substack archive going forward that will be just for our subscribers. So just a little update on all of that. With that said, let's jump into the episode this week with Quinn. Welcome back, everybody. It is the first week of the month of September, which, as y'all know from last week's move to Substack, means this will be a full episode on my podcast this month. Quinn will also have it open on hers. And boy, do we have a banger for y'all. I love that I literally in my last episode, sharing those emails from people who had written in, mentioned this exact episode, and it just kind of took off from there. Quinn and I sat down, we were discussing a bunch of different episodes, and this was the one that was ready to come through. So today we are going to be discussing that tricky, for many, many people that I've talked to, many women considering divorce, that tricky emotional experience of feeling like maybe you don't want to stay married, divorce is the right decision for you, but just being in so much emotional turmoil over your children not being with you all the time anymore.
Yeah, this reminds me of a woman who reached out to me a while ago just considering divorce. She asked me to meet her for coffee. She has 2 tiny, tiny babies, like maybe 18 months apart. And she said, if I lose 50% of their life, I'm willing to stay married to this really difficult person. I would rather do that than miss out on 50% of their life, which sounds terrible, but I relate. But this is such an important topic that relates to women on so many levels. I love this email that was sent into you. Could you
Yes.
read that? Because I think this just
Yes.
it's full of so much good stuff.
Yeah. So this is the same email that I brought up in last week's, but we're going to read it again at the beginning of this episode. Not the entire one, but just this specific section where she was asking for this episode. So she says,
Mhm.
if it speaks to you, I'd love to hear an episode on how to work through the agony of leaving your kids half the time with the less than awesome other parent. I remember you saying that your kids aren't in your top few priorities, no judgment. I had my son in 2020 and I'm older. I had, quote, my time before he was born, and he's such a focus for me now. I know deep in my bones that having time and space to myself will be both incredibly rejuvenating and healing, and it will help me build the next chapter of my own life independent of being a mom. And all caps, my heart aches so much for the difficulties he'll face by spending so much more time with his father. I'm too familiar with the pain from my own childhood and from living with his father for so many years. I have a wonderful therapist, and that helps. But, quote, boots on the ground insights from you would be so appreciated. I haven't heard anyone on any podcast or other platform offer anything helpful. Things like, quote, studies show they only need one securely attached caregiver, end quote, etc., just don't cut it for me. We're biologically wired to be in close proximity to our kids for their survival. So this whole custody situation feels like death. And
Mm,
in that,
mm,
what, like, even as I was rereading it, Quinn, I was like, oh my God, there's just so much in here that is so good that we're going to break down, discussing in so many different ways, like the different ways that we'll come to this. I think one of the things I noticed too from reading this around the second time, Quinn, was just realizing we're going to talk about this later. There's kind of two different challenges here, right? There's the challenge
yeah.
of just being away from your children, even if they are with someone you trust half the
Mhm.
time. In her instance, she's talking specifically about having to leave your kids with someone that it sounds like you don't trust or that you're actually worried about them living with half the time.
Yeah, and boy, can I relate. This is so where I was and what kept me in my marriage, knowing that I would probably thrive more outside of a marriage, but such deep worry for my children, those people that I would give my life for, and I was giving my life for them. So it blinded me to a lot of things, but she's right, we need some actions, some boots on the ground. How do we reframe this? How do I manage my nervous system through this? And
Mhm.
she's right. It's not enough to say, well, your kids only need one good parent. It
Yeah.
doesn't really help. So I'm glad we're finally digging through this. But what I think
Yeah.
was most interesting to me is how different you and I are in our personal frameworks of how we look at this situation, how we are as mothers. And so much of that is informed by how we were raised and our views. So, like she mentioned in the email, you have been very clear on your podcast that your children are not your top priority for your
Yep.
life.
Yep.
And I think even though she says no judgment, there may be some question about that. And I want you to dig into it a little bit so we have a clear framework on how you approach motherhood. And then I'll share mine.
One of the things as we were developing this episode together that we were like is so powerful about us doing it with both of us is that we come from very different parenting frameworks and
Mhm.
we have very different experiences around parenting. And we will dive in a little bit later because we want to really dig into this statement that she makes at the end that even as I read it again, I was like, it is such a punchy statement that we're biologically wired to be in close proximity to our kids for their survival. So we actually went and
Mhm.
we researched some of this, which is the beauty of us coming from different angles, right? That was something that hearing that, I was like, I don't actually resonate with that statement. Like, why don't I resonate with that? Why don't I buy into that? So, yes, thank you for explaining that we need to first share our personal frameworks coming into this. And honestly, what a gift it is that we come from such different frameworks because that allows us to come at this conversation from very, very different angles and kind of cover a lot of the bases. So for me, some of the things we realized together that probably like are the biggest that weigh the most on like why I am the mother I am or why I approach parenting the way I do was that I was the oldest of 8 kids. So
Mhm.
oldest daughter of a big family with a mother who, as you guys know, had a lot of her own mental illness struggles, had to really become what I needed to be for her and the family. So grew up
Mhm.
without a lot of individuation. Looking back, like so much of my life was just what does everybody else need me to be? And I'll be that to keep the peace. Also, my mother was very intrusive in my life, very controlling. She had to know everything. She had to be super, super close. Where her mother had been a little more avoidant, and I think she had felt the pain of that. She had determined like she was going to be best friends with her kids, and that was not an option.
Mhm.
That was not like, "I would like to be your friend." It was like, "We are best friends, and you will tell me everything." So,
Yeah, she probably agreed with the statement that she was biologically, like, hardwired to have to be with you, and that's how she could keep you safe.
yes. Yes, and that she knew what was best for me, and
Yeah.
that was like a gift given her by being my mother. She innately knew what I needed, and in her believing that, she really stifled my ability to know for myself what I needed. So, that's an important thing to know going into this because as we contrasted it with your framework, right?
Mhm.
What was your
Yeah.
childhood and your parenting with your mother like?
I was number 8 of 10 children, number 7 of 8 daughters. By the time my parents had me, they were pretty much done being parents. They were so over
Check
it.
out.
Yes, and so while I had a stay-at-home mom, and she was there when I got up, and she was there when I got home, she was not someone that you could really connect with emotionally. So even though she was there, it wasn't it wasn't a really great situation having her there all the time, and I didn't realize how much I would enjoy being a mother. I didn't grow up thinking I wanted to have children, and then I married a man who had children, and I thought, "Maybe I'm not going to have kids, and I'll just love his children."
Wow.
But then I ended up having, 9 children. I really fell in love with being a mother, but it wasn't something I had planned for.
That I'm so glad you're sharing that piece too, because that just also blows my mind. That you did not grow up being like, "I am just so excited. I can't wait to be a mom," and you end up with
Mhm.
9 children.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I grew up like, yes, motherhood, I'm gonna be a wife, I'm gonna be a mom. I bought in entirely
Mhm.
that motherhood was gonna be the thing that completely fulfilled me and had no aspirations outside of, like, I'm gonna stay at home and I'm gonna raise my kids.
Yeah, mine was opposite. I thought I would have my PhD, I would have a career. I got married late in life for Mormons. I was 26. Right? Had my first at 27, had my last at 42. So, like, my youngest right now is 11, and I absolutely love like, it's one of the favorite aspects of myself that I developed. So I relate to your listener where she's like, "I had my time," even though I don't feel like I had my time before my children, but it sounds like she really loves this new aspect of being a mother. And I
Mhm.
really fell in love with it as well. But I didn't have your experience of having already raised 7 children by the time you were 18.
Well,
My
yeah,
older siblings did that for me.
and having just I was really raising my mother as well. I don't
Yes.
think you raised your mother as much as I
No.
did. I was very parentified. I was a stabilizing force for the entire family. And then, I my journey with motherhood was more of when I did start having children, kind of being a little shell shocked
Mhm.
around, okay, I'm not actually really like totally into this. I'm dysregulated probably the majority of the time by this because
Mhm.
I was such a young mother. I got
Yes.
married at 19 and I had my first, I think it was like 22, 23.
Mhm.
So these are all, and why we're taking the time to provide you this framework is so, as we'll discuss a little later, some of the facts we learned around this whole idea that we are biologically programmed to want to be near our children is way, way more nuanced than we've been
Yeah.
led to believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because if it was 100% true, you and I and all women would experience that, and
Across
yet
the board.
it's very fluid. There's a spectrum.
It's a massive, massive, massive spectrum
Yeah.
that, that we have to be very aware of when we hear such a seductive sounding phrase,
Mhm.
right? This idea we're biologically wired. That has been you're not just saying that out of nowhere. That has
Mhm.
been programmed culturally into us in the last multiple decades
Mhm.
of parenting. And I guess we jump in now into talking about more of like what we discovered factually around that actual biological component.
Yeah, let's talk about it because, I mean, within Mormonism, we're definitely taught that
Oh,
God
big time.
says. I mean, within the Mormons have this revelation called the Proclamation to the World on the Family,
Yep,
and so we were told from the pulpit, your role by God
yep.
is to nurture your children. Period. End of sentence. That's that's your
That's
world.
it. Like that is the beginning of the sentence and the end of the sentence is you are a nurturer. Done.
Yeah. But it's not just within Mormonism, it's not within fundamentalism. It's really in this idea of the nuclear family where the mother
Yes.
needs to come out of the workforce, off the farm. Like she is this person that runs the household for the benefit of everyone in there, for the benefit of the husband, most of all, so that he can go out into the world and create and bring in money. And she's
Mhm.
there to consume and produce within the home and raise the children. So it's not just a religious idea. It's
Yeah.
very much
It's
a capitalist
capitalist.
idea that within this box, this is your role. Yeah, the unpaid labor of women is really, really important. But if we just talk about it as, oh, the man gets to go out and earn money for his labor, you need to stay home and not be paid for your labor, it doesn't sound as sexy as, no,
You are
this is special.
biologically wired to need to be near your children. And I just want to offer that there has been a lot of, I mean, in the last 20 to 30 years, parenting styles that have come out of this when we talk about
Mhm,
helicopter parenting and, empty nest syndrome
mhm.
from your entire identity as a woman without you knowing it, being brainwashed into my sole role is to be here for my kids. And that was me. So, in this discussion, it's important to remember that we have bigger cultural forces at play.
Mhm.
And, Quinn, why don't you take us into some of the biological components that are real in this
Yeah, because I don't want
process?
to dismiss the biology out of hand. As in most situations with humans, there is truth about nurture and there's truth about nature. And it's the
Hmm.
combination of the two that make it so potent and it makes us more likely to attribute everything to one side. So
Yeah.
while your listener is saying it's all nature, what we want people to understand is from what we just talked about is that there's the nurture, there's the water you're swimming in that makes it feel so compelling. But I also want to be careful to not dismiss biology out of hand because we
Mhm.
are dealing with maternal hormones. And I think that's what awakened in me when I held my first child. And I was like, OMG, this is what they were talking about. I have so much love for this being. And not everyone experiences that.
Mhm.
But there are those hormones, oxytocin, prolactin, estradiol, progesterone, that influences this caregiving behavior. It influences the way our milk is created and formed and drops to feed this child. It enhances the bonding. If you've ever nursed your baby and you see them just kind of drunk off of your milk and you're like, "Oh my god, this is the best." And yet, studies show that these hormone levels that affect our emotional regulation and attachment readiness, it's affected by our situation. A woman
Mhm.
in a domestic violence situation, that's going to have an impact on all of these hormones as opposed
Mhm.
to you feeling very safe and loved in your relationship. That's going to affect your hormones. So it's not as easy as separating it from women like are broken or not broken. It's this interplay between the water that we're swimming in and the biology that we have.
Yeah, and I think another aspect of understanding kind of the science side of this is the study around epigenetics. And
Mhm,
that, yes, you can have a gene that maybe is predisposed one way, but until it gets turned on or turned off, it's not actually going to show up. And so, in this example that you used of like a woman who's maybe in a safer environment when she gives birth, those maternal instincts being turned on, I go so much to my birth of my first child. Like,
mhm.
we had moved out to North Carolina for a month so that my ex-husband could get job training. I was in a city I'd never been in before, 8 months pregnant. No
Mm.
OBs would take me because I was so far in my pregnancy. Every OB I called, I didn't even know this was a thing, but every OB I called refused to take me because they didn't wanna take on the risk of taking someone so late in her pregnancy.
Oh
And
my god.
yes, and naively not knowing, like, really anything. This is, just the broken lineage of mothers and grandmothers, like, not understanding what birth is like. I was like, "I'll
Mhm.
just go through it with Shay. It'll be like a bonding experience for us." And I told my mother and my mother-in-law, like, not to come out. We were gonna
Oh,
go through it together, and that birth was with, a hospital staff, an on-call doctor that I'd never met before, some guy, and after pushing for, I think it was a lot of pushing for a long time, and a
yeah.
9-pound, 8-ounce baby. Like, it by all accounts, the experience was more traumatic than yeah, than
Them
connect
bonding for
than
you.
bonding for
Yeah,
me.
okay.
Exactly. That's so important because we know postpartum depression is
Mhm.
a huge aspect for many women.
Yeah.
And we were literally talking about this week, just like how what's the book you've been reading that talks about how
Invisible
women
Women.
invisible women tell me just give a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's this deep dive into how men are the default human. And so everything from safety features to how bathrooms are organized to studies that are even supposed to apply to women are done on men, and that men are the default. And so we don't study, like, we'll study depression, but it's easier to study depression in men because they don't have the hormonal fluctuations. And so even studies that are on postpartum depression are often just generalized from what we know about depression
Yep.
in men. I would like to push the idea that maybe postpartum depression is far more common than what
Mhm.
we are willing to admit. We really don't know how common it is. We hear about the horrific cases where a mother harms herself or harms her baby, that the postpartum depression has gotten so bad.
Mhm.
But I think with the hormone fluctuations post birth that we rely on for maternal bonding, given our economic situation, our healthcare situation, our relationship situation, all of these hormones can create a lot of fear in us. And a lot of it we just don't know because we
Yeah.
don't generally study
And
women.
also the impact of, like, nobody prepping me for that. There was
Yes.
never a conversation growing up that was like, "Hey, you may not feel drawn towards your children after you birth them. You may feel depressed and isolated," and nobody, just now I'm thinking, like, if this was my own daughter, I would have been like, "Oh my god, sweetie, you're gonna be in a different city. you're gonna be all by
Mhm.
yourself. You're gonna have
Yeah.
there may be people supporting you kinda through the church, but they're gonna be people you just met, like, a few weeks ago. This is
Mhm.
gonna be really hard on your mental health. We have got to support you. There was none of that because as you're raised in this world where, like, you're a woman. You're gonna be able to do it. You're just having a
Yeah.
baby.
And I think it's
So
important to jump back a few generations where my grandmas, they had much more of a culture of community and
yes.
interrelationship and mothers supporting mothers, where it wasn't, you have your baby, you're sent home and you're alone in your apartment
Yep.
in this city. And a lot of industrialized countries today, they send nurses and midwives into the home to check on the moms, that so much more support is given to help this transition. But if this transition from not being a mother to being a mother was automatic and biologically wired, we
Yeah.
wouldn't have to work on it. And there are a lot of women that have to work on it.
Yeah,
That being
and
said, I don't feel like I did have to work on it,
yes.
but I want to acknowledge there's some women that do.
And I love that we're having this I love that this is like an unexpected gem kind of rabbit hole of this episode. Yes, this is not the heart of the episode, but I do think we're spending time on it because it is so important for our conversation, especially in the US, in our politics right now, with this crazy emphasis right now that like women should be having more babies, just like across
Yeah,
the board, that like
yeah.
this is what women were born to do because look, their bodies can do it, so they should be doing it. And that somehow they're going to actually like in an environment where they don't actually have support from their communities, from the government, financial support to do this, that this is going to be a good thing.
Yes, I love that line where you're like, "Their bodies are able to do this, so they should do this." And I'm like, "Men's bodies are able to throw logs, so they should do that." We don't say that about men. Like,
No.
oh my god.
No. So, yes, it's we've kind of gone deep into this, and I also think, though, this is an important education for all of us. When we talk about boots on the ground, this is the kind of discussions you and I have that go
Yeah,
into the deep nuances of what it actually looks like to be a human living a human life, and for me, this idea that you will be biologically wired to be close to your kids was not the case for me. And I think it's good to
yeah,
provide that kind of perspective around people wondering why my children maybe are not the thing that I love being around the most or my top priority. And if you understand more of the context
yeah,
of what I went through and experienced, and then, I mean, you couple that with like, after I had my children, we went back and I raised them by myself. You
yeah. You
know,
had a
I
husband that
was
worked late hours, not really available. You were a
all
single
the
mom,
time
a married single mother. Yeah,
living in a town with no family,
yeah,
and that is actually not that rare. That that's
yeah,
what I'm coming to learn, like, there are actually a lot of people who know what that feels like, and, even if your family is local, it doesn't mean they're actually, like, in there raising your children. Like, just 200 years ago in human history, we did. That's the really, like, we have to keep repeating this way of
mhm,
raising children in a nuclear family where it's just a mother and a father providing for the entire needs, and often just a mother if you have a father that is working outside of the home all the time. So you
yeah,
as a single person are providing the entire support for
yeah,
another human's development. When we frame it out that way, it's like, oh, it makes sense that there are a lot of us, a little bit more in my experience as well, that like
mhm,
those hormones were so fucked by the trauma and the pressure and the overwhelm of that
yeah,
task being placed solely on our shoulders
yeah.
that a lot of that didn't kick in.
And it doesn't mean that you don't love your kids.
No.
It has nothing to do with that. Yeah.
No, but it does mean when you talk about like, "Oh, I just love snuggling with my children. I just love when they come in and snuggle." And, we're doing story time at night and by the like third story, I'm like, "Okay, this has been fun. Night. I need to go to bed."
Yes, yes.
Like,
Yes, I think that's important to note. Like, we have these different responses to our children,
mhm.
to our mothering, not because we have different hormones, but we have different backgrounds and different
Yes.
situations. Now, we've talked a lot
Yes.
about the biology of the mother, but I think it's important to talk about the biology of the baby and
Yeah.
the attachment of the baby, because I think where your listener, I'd like to add some nuance, is that it's the baby, it's the infant that is biologically
Yes.
predisposed to have a close bond with the caregiver rather than the other way around, because that's where the evolutionary survival advantage comes from when the baby can be soothed by the caregiver. And we know a
Yeah.
lot more about reactive attachment disorders and that a child does need a
A secure this is where
secure
we say a
attachment.
child really only needs one securely attached parent because why this is so important. When we discovered this piece, when we were researching factually and talking specifically about John Bowlby's attachment theory, okay? I think we've extrapolated the whole infants are predisposed to biologically bond with their caregivers, and we've like thought that that goes back the other way as well, that
Mhm,
you as a parent are also that way. But you have to understand that for the child, that is an evolutionary survival advantage because they
mhm.
are helpless.
Yeah.
So they are biologically bonded, like, take care of me. But you as an adult, actually, it was so great when I was talking to Quinn about this. I was like, actually, if you think about it, like, I'm obviously extrapolating massively, but way back when, like, having a baby strapped to you that was crying if you lived in the wilderness was probably not an evolutionary advantage.
Right. Right. It
Like,
was a huge
so
risk.
it's a huge risk. And that is the reality of having children. If we look at it statistically, remember what did you tell me? The biggest indicator that women will live in poverty is if they have children?
Yes.
So
Yes.
let that land a little bit more on understanding, and this goes to what you said. With you were like, so much of this comes from a patriarchal lens of training women to how did you say it? You were like, how do we keep women dependent?
How do we keep women dependent? We need to tell them that their children's survival depends on them, that
Yep.
their unpaid labor is is an honor, a privilege, and that their partner is not capable
Yep.
of nurturing.
Yes.
That women are just naturally that way. Men aren't, or men can't. The learned helplessness of
Yeah.
men. Because when we look at this, what would be the advantage of you being the only person that can care for your child? There really is no biological evolutionary advantage.
No.
There's an advantage to have your child be safe with many caregivers, the husband or,
The
father of the
grandma,
child,
the
grandma, neighbors,
the aunties, the
community group.
cousins,
Yeah.
like it was when we were in communities.
Yeah.
But if you buy into this idea that you are the only one and then your spouse is incapable, like we've been trained to think,
Mhm.
like, well, men are not the natural nurturers,
Yeah.
then you can't leave
And it
with
creates that word that she says, agony. How do you deal with the
yes.
agony? Oh boy, do I get it.
Yes. And that's what I love is in sharing in really using my story to show how much this is not in it's not a default. It emphasizes and kind of contrasts so beautifully with what is happening for you and her and the agony that the two of like, okay, so
Mhm.
where is this agony coming from? It's coming from this idea that without you, your children will suffer immeasurably.
Yes.
And we're going to break down because we do have to address it in two different ways.
Yeah.
There's the aspect of what I was and the crazy thing is, y'all, I experienced this when I got divorced. I had my own, like, I don't want my kids being alone with their dad. I'm the primary caregiver. I'm the stay-at-home mom. They've never even had a night alone with their dad without like a mom or a grandma there. Okay? So there's
Mhm.
this aspect, but still him being a safe person versus, and what we'll get to go into, which I think is a little bit more of the very particular experience that you and her are experiencing. It's different when you have a partner that you are worried will not show up, that will be abusive, that will be neglectful, that will emotionally hurt your children. And that is
Yeah.
different. So we have to really dive into both of those. But I think leaving this first section, we're hopefully helping you guys just open and question more this whole idea that we are biologically wired versus understanding that society and a lot of other factors have kind of told us that this is our most important identity as women. And so, really watching that in ourselves and seeing, as we're going to talk about, if part of why we're distressed that our children are not going to be with us all the time is because we are losing our identity as
Mhm.
being the sole provider, the one that knows them best, the one that knows them better than their dad ever could. Right,
Yeah.
Quinn?
Yeah, like, we are super special. But I also want to just shine a light because it's kind of blowing my mind how we used to say that women were incapable of so many things. Like, they couldn't do hard work. They couldn't go to college because it would affect their reproductive organs. Like, we've always had these limits on what a woman is capable of doing. And we still have a lot of those limits when we talk about what dads are capable of doing.
Yes.
And they're both bullshit. Humans are capable of far more than we give ourselves credit for, but we've drawn the line in these
Mhm.
gendered ways that women do this, men do that, and we've been more expansive around what women are capable of and given us more rights and more opportunities to grow in different ways. And I think it's time we give our partners that opportunity as well. Like, even if it hasn't been fully developed in them as nurturers. So that I know that's not where we're going with this one, but I just want to put a pin in it. Well, I mean, we kind of are because you saw your
Yeah.
ex really step up.
In ways I never would have ever dreamed.
Yeah.
Like, and this, what we're dancing around in so much of this episode is the episodes about the tragedy of heterosexuality. This is
Yeah.
just another reverberation off of that root issue of when we make everybody have to play very specific gender roles, heterosexual gender roles, then it does not allow for the very human experience of when, just because of the way your life has evolved, you don't fit those roles.
Yeah.
And I have had men reach out. I'm thinking of a man who reached out that listens to the podcast where he's like, I am a stay at home dad. You know, I
Mhm.
actually resonate a lot. I listen to your podcast because I actually resonate a lot with being in the position a lot of your viewers are in.
Yes.
So even though this podcast is, you know, geared towards women considering divorce because of the historical
Mhm.
precedents, the
Yeah.
very real reality that I want everybody to keep remembering is that these are constructed roles
Yeah.
that really narrowly define humans. And as we saw in my instance, so we're getting to talk about the rest of the episode is going to be focused on these two different challenges. So we've kind of outlined and hopefully made you guys question if it's not guaranteed that it's all biologically, yes, there's some component of that. What are the challenges that we're facing then when we're getting divorced and we are stressed about our kids being with the other parent? The first challenge is when we are having a lot of fear and discomfort of the loss of time being spent with our
Mhm.
children, the loss of the memories we get to have with them,
Mhm.
We know the other parent isn't necessarily a bad parent, but also maybe because we've been in such strong roles of us over caretaking and handling everything, we don't entirely trust that they're gonna be able to step up and do it.
Yeah.
And that was my situation, for
Yeah.
sure. My ex-husband and I played the roles entirely. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for 10 years without any
Mhm.
kind of work, and he was an investment banker. So long, long hours, gone most of the time, did not know the kids, doctors, dentists, didn't attend parent teacher moments, didn't go to parent nights, didn't get up and take the kids to school in the morning. Not because I don't think he would have wanted to, but just like these were the roles and we were
Mhm.
playing them.
Yeah.
And to do them would have required, like an episode we've talked about in the past, would have required him to give up some really great easier benefits, of just not having to get up, not having to worry about that stuff. It would have taken extra effort for him to lean in those ways. So he wasn't going to
Yeah.
until we got divorced.
Yeah. What a gift. What a gift. And I mean that, like, it's such a gift to him, like, it's the heavy lift that you don't know you can do until you have no other choice than to do
Yep.
it, and
Yep.
women get that a lot in just being a mother, but also all of the responsibilities that we have that we didn't know we could do until we did it, and this is one of the ways that the men get to do that.
Yeah. And in some of the instances, which I've seen in my own case, I've seen in some of my other clients' cases, I think I'm going to be writing a post on this soon on the Substack around this whole idea of like when you divorce the good guy.
Mhm.
When you divorce the good guy, the struggle is different in that you have to give up control.
Mhm.
You have to give up being the one that's taking care of everybody and always knowing what's going on. I remember you remember coaching me through this. I think a lot of
Mhm.
my stuff in the beginning was like, they're not getting to bed on time over there, or they're on devices all the time, or he's
Mhm.
not actually like connecting with them. A lot of judgment, getting to feel superior because, over here we have chores and over here we're learning responsibility and over there they're on devices. Do you remember that?
Yes. Oh, yes. So there's this idea that we are losing our kids. We're losing them. We're losing time. We are losing. And I want to keep in mind that the point of all of this, it really is difficult as humans to overlook our own suffering. But as a parent, I want to bring you back again and again and again to
Yep.
the idea of you're raising another person and how can we best support the growth of this other person? And in supporting their growth, believe it or not, we get to grow as well. So I had to go from this point of I am losing my kids for half the time. I never had 50-50. You have that situation with you where you do have the 50-50.
Hmm.
But even for the women who are losing custody half the time, see, even the way I think about it, I'm like, losing, they're losing. I think a helpful reframe is that your child, just like gaining a community 200 years ago, they now have two homes where they
Hmm.
get to experience safety and love and experiences and resilience. And whether that home is grandma's home or ex husband's home or a daycare, finding that other place with humans to trust, it doesn't negate what you offer, but it
Hmm.
does give them the experience of mom is a safe place, dad is a safe place, this daycare place is a safe place, Nana's
Hmm.
is a safe place, and it expands their sense of freedom and belonging in this world.
Yeah, which they're going to need as
Yes.
adults. That is what we want for our children, ultimately. We want them to not have their entire life wrapped up because if it's only this one area, my home is the safest place, then
Mhm.
one day if they too face being with a partner that actually is not a fit for them, they don't have a brain that's like, there are other safe people in my life that I can be connected to. Makes me think
Yes.
so much of what happens, in the tragedy of heterosexuality when she's talking about, queer communities, how you spread out your connection over a bigger group of people and you feel safer because your entire mental health is not just on your one partner.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I think the biggest piece is processing your grief at
Yeah.
the losing them feeling with your own support group,
Yes.
with your therapist, with your coach, with that's we have women in our community that are doing that
Mhm.
right now
Yeah.
because what's really happening there for you, if it you've got a safe partner who may need to step up and kind of grow in some ways, but if you're feeling like you're losing them, it's also examining how much of my identity as being their caregiver am I losing? And this is where a lot of women talk about when my kids aren't with me, I feel lonely. I don't have anything to do. I don't know who I am without them.
Yes. Yes. Now, all of that being said, I think there are some boots on the ground, things that you can do to help this transition be easier, and recognizing that any new transition can be challenging, and that's
Yes.
okay. Nothing's gone wrong just because you feel dysregulated or your child feels dysregulated with this new situation. So I think that it's important to have, especially for the younger children, goodbye rituals. And they do some of those automatically, as far as they're going to pack a bag to go to the other house. If you keep the majority of their things and they don't have double of everything, they're probably going to pack some things. Do they give you a hug? Do you tell them, okay, I'm going to see you at this time, or this is when you're going to be picked up, setting some
Mhm.
expectations. I always tell my kids, I hope you have a great time. And I try to mean it. I try to trust that they really are. So there is this send off. I always make sure they're fed, things that I'm concerned might not happen at dad's house, but I want to have those consistent rituals. This is what it feels like to go to dad's house, and just in a systematic way, that it's like this off
Mhm.
ramp from mom's house. And then we have an on ramp back to mom's house.
Yep.
Sometimes I pick them up and I have a 45-minute drive back home. Oftentimes they're just dropped off at my house when they're supposed to be at their dad's. And so they're just suddenly home. And if that's the case, that's when I hug them and I hold them and I listen to them and I make sure they're fed again. And I ask
Mhm.
them, what's the best part of your weekend or this time with dad? And sometimes they have things to share, sometimes they don't. And letting it all be okay, but allowing for that reconnection back home,
Yes.
back with me, because I think it's really natural to have some kind of dysregulation. And that's true if they go to dad's for the weekend, or if they go to grandma's for the weekend, or they go spend a weekend at scout camp or with their friends.
Yep.
It's a human thing to need to come back and co regulate with people at home. How do you do it
Yeah.
with your boys?
Yeah, I think ours, in the beginning, one of the things that helped was I remember I don't do this anymore, but when they were younger, we had a calendar that was, like, highlighted with, like, the days they would be at dad's, the days they would be at mine, just so that they would
Mhm.
know what was coming,
Yeah.
when they were going to dad's, when they were gonna be at mom's, and then, my kids have always been super stoked to go to their dad's because there's way more video games.
Yeah.
And I've learned to make a lot of peace with that and to feel grateful that, their dad works from home. So
Mhm.
they still get a lot of care from their dad, even if they're on devices for a lot of it because he has to work. This is also where we
Mhm.
have to step away from the like perfectionistic ideas of what our lives need to be
Yeah.
and kind of get real with this is what life is and it's still good. But similar to you, when my kids come back, I always expect that day is gonna be a little bit dysregulating for everybody, and I intentionally, when they're gone, resource
Mhm.
myself. You know, I
Yeah.
am not like, oh, I'm going to get my entire house clean and I'm going to do all this shit and I'm going to get everything done. I've taken an approach of I need to be filling my cup fully when they're gone so that when they come back, there's overflow. And then on those days, yeah, I try to, I know they're going to need some time on devices as well instead of just like, let me be with you all the time, tell me everything. That's not about them. That's about me needing to feel connected to them and needing to know that they want to be here and love me. And so
Yeah,
trying to be
I
a little more
agree.
chill.
Yeah, to kind of parse that, what is my child's true need, and I can help meet that versus
Mhm.
what do I need and I want my child to meet that, and
Yeah.
instead just see that, acknowledge it, and take it to your girlfriend, take it to your therapist, take it to your coach. It's not your child's job to
Mm-mm.
make you feel better.
It's not your child's job to help you regulate.
No.
This is the whole they biologically need you to regulate. They are
Mhm.
not there to help you regulate through them, which is what I
Yeah.
had to do as a parentified child for my mother.
Yeah.
That's a key
Yeah.
distinction.
Yeah.
One of the other things I love when we're talking about these ways to kind of shift when we're
Mhm.
thinking about this dynamic is I had to, and I'm even doing this now. In fact, it's probably been a little bit more so this year, is recognizing like the foundation we have doesn't just come from the amount of time we're together.
Mhm.
Instead of this quantity of time, you really have to shift away from it's about quantity to quality. And I had this moment recently with Joe because I'm really not seeing my oldest son very much anymore with him living at his dad's. He's so busy with school. And I kind of had an emotional moment with him this week where I cried and I said, "Can we just choose to believe that like I already did enough?" Right? I'm putting that in air quotes. But this is that idea of like I've already built the foundation there in showing up and loving him and being there for the ways that I could in the ways that I could. Because here's the reality, y'all. They eventually grow up and leave. Like you have to make peace with that at some point
Yeah.
that your the control is gone and they have flown and my kids are probably I'm realizing because of the divorce and because we've already gone through so much of this, it looks like they're going to fly the coop a little earlier. And same with your kids.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's natural. I think we've decided as a society a child is ready to move out and start college at 18. Mine all start college early. I think most kids are, raring for more responsibility and growth. I'm a huge believer in giving them that opportunity, but also being the backstop and the support. I think
Uh-huh.
it's really unnatural, if anything, that you treat someone as a child until their 18th birthday and then you're like, okay, you're ready. And so I'm more about transitions and a support network and that kind of thing. And I think you make a really good point. This idea, I've given them enough, or at least I have built a foundation with my
Yes.
child. So your listener, where she has this young son, 5 years
Yeah,
old.
still young. Yeah.
Now, she still, even at that young age, has given him so much of a
Mhm.
foundation of her love and safety, and it doesn't go away by
No.
him being with dad part of the time.
Which we think it does. We think less time with us means their foundation, their connection with us will be weakened. I love you making that point. Like, no.
Yeah, yeah. And my youngest, she was 6 at the time of the divorce. And so some of the things that we did, she has a stuffed turtle that she brings between houses. Now, just realize if they have a very special thing that they need in order to sleep and they leave it at the other parent's house, you'll need to get it. But it can be helpful to have things that go between houses, Or I would put on like a dark red lipstick and kiss the palm of her hand. And I'm like, if you get lonely, just look at the kiss,
Oh.
like I'm there. And so it wasn't obtrusive, like it was there. She could put her hand around it or hug herself with that hand. I'm like,
Mhm,
I'm still a part of you. And in our divorce decree, the kids have access to a telephone so they can reach out. So if
mhm,
I am the one that usually helps them and regulates with them, I'm still available. And that's an important part because I don't have a really safe partner. And so that's one of the things. But I think for anyone to realize you can still talk to your child, it's okay. I think having a photo that can go with them. So if they want to look at a picture of you or a journal where they can be writing things that they're enjoying or emotions that they're having a hard time or things that they want to talk to you about. But just realize that anything you do, your co parent has the right to do as well. So
mhm,
if your co parent wants to call every night, like mine does, your kids get to talk to your co parent when they're at your house. If he wants to
mhm,
send a picture of himself with your children and they want to display it, he gets to do that.
mhm.
If he wants to give them a journal and say, write down everything you do at your mom's house, he gets to do that. So just realize anything that you do, your partner gets to do too.
Yeah, and I think, it is a little I'm realizing as you're sharing these things, I'm like, this is a big difference. At least it's a big difference in mine because in my scenario, my ex-husband lives 5 minutes up the road,
Yeah.
and I got really that was just the way it worked out where he decided to live so closely because he took the divorce and went, "I want to be a really good dad." And
Hmm.
he dove in deeper. The divorce triggered in him a response to be an even better dad, so he lives up the road. And actually, I found that with my children in the beginning, when I would call them and they were at their dad's, it actually was more dysregulating for them. This is a perfect example of,
Hmm.
like, calling them actually seemed to upset them because it would remind them they were having a great time at their dad's, and then it would remind them that I wasn't there. And so
Hmm.
we pretty early on just let go of the calling the kids when we were apart for the boots on the ground application of this seems to not work well for them. They seem to get upset when we remind them through calling, and what that was me having to go, I need to resource myself more. If
Yes.
I'm missing them and wanting to call them, and I have made a intentional practice of never when they're leaving saying like, "I'm going to miss you," or "I miss you. I can't wait to see you again." Like, I have really tried to create space around never making them feel like somehow them leaving impacted or made it more difficult on me. And
Yes. Oh, I love that.
yeah. So that's, in the instance where you have a parent where like they are doing great over there, they are loving their lives, and maybe you're just feeling a little bit of the loneliness and the sadness,
Yeah.
not calling them if it's going to be something for you because you're, missing them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Yeah. And I think that along with the idea that time apart from you might be harming them, to reframe that in terms of how time apart from you is teaching them important things about their resourcefulness, about their ability to handle different situations, independence. We know it's coming, that separation is part of growing up, but a child learning how to thrive in a variety of circumstances is a life skill that can serve your
Yes.
child in so many ways. And I love how you have embraced this idea of having this time away from your kids. It's not a time to do chores and just clean up the house and make life better for them when they get back. This is a time for you
Yes.
to resource yourself. And as your listener said in her email, she knows
Yeah,
in her
she gets
bones
this. She
this is
gets
an important
yes.
thing. Yes. Use this time to reclaim yourself outside of motherhood
Yeah.
And this is such a good time for your child as well to resource themselves outside of their direct relationship with you. They get to practice skills. Like we practice nonviolent communication in our home. They get to practice that in another
Mhm.
environment where that is not the way people communicate. They also
Yeah.
learn how to cook for themselves. They know how to take care of
Which
themselves in a
which
multitude of
like
ways.
I think this is why I was so we're talking about the ease with which and it was a little bit easier for me to let my kids go because of these factors, right?
Mhm.
To some extent. But a big piece of that was that I saw how my mother being completely engaged in my life and just enmeshed really messed me up when I went to college. I had no life
Mm.
skills. I did not know how to feed myself. I barely knew how to do my laundry. I knew just like the rudimentary stuff, but how to live, how to be independent was not available to me.
Yeah.
And I look at my children now, and that is one of the things I am most proud of is that they know they are loved and they know that they can do hard things.
Yeah.
Like, there is a level of self-trust that has been built through this dynamic of going back and forth from these their parents' homes and being
Mhm.
loved in both environments and learning how to interact and relate in 2 different environments where there's different rules, where there's different like, if anything, my kids are really fucking smart now at knowing how to get what they want depending on which person they're talking to.
Yeah.
And that
Yes.
is a skill I want them to have in life.
I know, like, my girls, they wanna get their noses pierced, and they're like, "How do we do it? Mom, can we do this?" I'm like, "You have to have your dad's permission." And they're like, "Let's tell dad that mom won't let us." I bet he'll say yes.
Like, your children's brains are forming neural pathways and all sorts of extra stuff. It's like
The
a
skills.
the skills. Yes, but, gorgeous reframe from time away from me is going to be harmful for them. If you're in this instance where you have a co-parent that is, like, showing up,
Yeah.
in the ways that they can, and even then, even if they're not to the level that my ex-husband is, where he has, like, I wanna be the best dad and has really engaged in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
still, your children are learning things that are important to them, and this goes back to the piece of, like, having to accept you chose to marry that person, and that
Yes.
person is your kid's parent.
Yes. Oh. Yes, yes, and that is for you to deal with. Instead, it's not for your kids. But I love how you have brought in this idea of what your mother modeled for you. And for my mom, she was a stay-at-home mom. She was always, like, around, but not really emotionally connected to us, and I think she would
Mhm,
have benefited from being away from us. She had a lot of hopes and dreams. She wanted to finish her college education. She got married when she was 19. I think she would have really benefited from a different kind of lifestyle. Of course, there's no way to know. But
mhm.
I want us to be careful that we model for our children courage and trust and emotional honesty
Yes.
and letting them see that as what an adult does, regardless of what your co-parent does, but
Yes.
showing up in a way that you can be proud of. And it may not, I mean, we don't get to decide how our kids process this whole experience.
Nope.
So we just do the best we can. We do the best we can. But I think it's important to model what we want to show our
Yeah,
children.
it comes back to the, like, are you living the life you would want your children to live?
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you're not, and you're telling them, "Go be brave, go do these things," but you are modeling martyrdom,
Mhm.
that's what they are gonna see and interpret as the role.
Yes.
You can't the blueprint you give is the blueprint you live. It's not the blueprint you speak or tell them is what they should be. It's the blueprint you live. And this is where we really, and this goes back to the listeners, the message of like, yes, there is a short-term cost, right?
Mhm,
Yes, you are not. I have missed out on things in my children's lives. I got
mhm.
a message last night that came through of my oldest at a birthday party with a whole bunch of other friends. I didn't even know he was going to that birthday party. And I felt the sting of like, oh, I didn't even know he was going to that. And that feeling of like kind of being left out.
Yeah.
They've been on family vacations with my ex husband's family down to
Mhm.
beautiful locations that I can't take them to,
Yeah.
you know? Those are all things I get to hear stories from those vacations that I'm not a part of.
So, let
But
me ask you this, if your goal is to model emotional adulthood and you're hearing something or seeing a text and you're feeling that disappointment, you're hearing about these vacations. Tell us what that looks like. How do you model emotional adulthood for your children in your response to the reality of feeling disappointment?
yeah, I think it's in this specific one where you're feeling disappointed about a consequence of a choice you've made. Right? And this is where we get very real about this is the real non-negotiable quote consequence of divorce is that you're not going to be with your kids 100% of the time because you're not going to
Mhm.
be living with their other parent
Mhm.
100% of the time. So it's understanding that if that disappointment is related to a choice I have made, or hearing about something fun that they're doing that I'm not a part of, it's registering that in my own body and understanding that's work for me to go process outside of my relationship with my children. That's for me when they are not with me to be journaling, to talking about with my coach, pouring out. And that's the whole like there is a short-term cost of
Mhm.
missing out on these parts of my children's lives for the long-term win that I am betting on of
Mhm.
them hopefully having a shot at having a future where they get to thrive, unlike the future I got from my
Mhm.
parents staying married
Yeah.
and perpetuating massive dysfunction and never really teaching me how to be on my own. So it's you have to constantly be digesting that disappointment by keeping the long game in mind. And that's what you said at
Yes.
the beginning, where you're like, we're going to have to keep bringing you back to, yes, this is tough, but what is ultimately the best for your children? And you being
Yes.
with them 100% of the time, as you and I both learned, our mothers were with us all the
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
doesn't actually mean children that grow up to be healthy, functioning adults.
Yes.
It's not just not guaranteed.
I agree. And our relationship with our kids is not guaranteed. They have to be with us, until they're 18, until they're
Mhm.
emancipated. We will have contact with them, barring any unforeseen incident. But what you ultimately want is that you'll have a relationship with them into adulthood.
Yes.
And the people that my children choose to connect with in their adulthood is me.
Mhm.
And not because I have all the answers or that I've done everything right, but I have consistently told them to trust themselves. I'm the one that extracted us from a cult. They
Mhm.
realize that I trust them and I want them to trust themselves. I'm okay with
Yeah.
them disappointing me. I
Yes.
tell them it's their job to disappoint me,
Yes,
that
you
I can
do.
handle it. Because I wish I had learned to disappoint people earlier in my life. So we've got to stay focused on the long game.
Yes.
It's tough when they're 5. It's tough when they're toddlers to wrap your mind around 20 years from now. But that's where we have to go. What is the long game? Because I'm playing for the long game. I want
Oh,
my
yeah.
kids to have a party when I die, not because I'm dead, because they know they wanna celebrate
Uh,
that they had me in their life. That's what I want,
yes.
the long game.
Yes. Yes. And when you ask, when we think like, how do you do this? This is the work of emotional adulthood. This is
Yes.
the work of coaching. This is the work of being able to manage your mind so that when it freaks out and you feel disappointment, you do not, because you can't process that emotion in your body, lash out at your children.
Yeah,
This is the whole divorce doesn't give you that.
yeah.
That's the work that is squarely in your lane. This is the work of healing the codependency, healing your own people pleasing, healing your own negation and abandonment of self that you learned in your childhood. All of that plays in creating an environment going forward where your children also want to be with
Mhm.
you and being ready in the case in mine, right, this year where it was like my oldest was like, I want to be a dad's.
Yeah.
And to not blow up that relationship by trying to keep him so that I could continue to feel like a good mom because my kid wants to live with me.
Okay, I wanna ask you something about that
Yeah.
because that sounds I would be really, really disappointed, really disappointed if one of my kids and I know their father is constantly trying to talk them into moving with him, and I know it's not going to happen, but when I think just theoretically about your situation and what impact that had on your nervous system, I mean, I got to watch it with
Mhm.
you processing that, and it wasn't an immediate, "Okay, I'm
No.
good with this. I can see that this is good for him." It was a process over several months, and now
Yes.
he's been at his dad's for several months. How is your relationship with him now
Mhm.
that he got what he wanted?
Well, and I think it's understanding that both of us, it was a complex process of me understanding this was what he was telling me straight up he wanted. And this is the whole like
Mhm,
trusting, especially when your kids get to that age. This is
mhm.
individuation. This is
Yeah.
moving into adulthood. He was telling me clearly what he wanted. I was fighting against it and saying, "I know what you need best," because I really thought what he
Mm,
needed to be with his was his mother. I mean, guys, I literally just played this whole thing out this
mhm.
year. And having to do my own deep grief work around acknowledging that because of my CBTSD, because of the trauma I've been through, I really couldn't show up for him in the ways that he was advocating for needing most.
Yeah.
And so it was a process of me also like self-reflecting and having to go, okay, I have to let go of this perfect standard of what can I actually, and it makes me think of a comment one of the women in our community recently posted, right? Where she's like, "How do you do it all?" And I haven't responded yet, but my response is going to be like, "You don't." I have
Mm,
tried to do it all and various things have been sacrificed in that. And I am having to this year reckon with like, okay, I need to change my priorities some. I
mhm,
cannot continue living as if I am a stay-at-home mom. It's just been a process
mhm,
I've had to learn over the last 4 to 5 years. I have to devote more of my energy to providing for myself and really focusing in on my business to protect things that also make the rest of this work. So, it's a deeply complex process that I'm so proud to say, yes, I still have moments of grief, as you know from this
mhm,
week, me being talking with Joe.
mhm.
But overall, our relationship has gotten so much better with me and my son. Like,
Mm,
we look forward to when we are spending time together. I was asking Joe the other day, and he's like, "Honestly, Britta, I think he gets it more. He sees what you're dealing with. He sees the dynamic. He instead of kind of engaging when his brothers are pushing back against the rules, he's a little bit more, like, in support of you because he went through a very adult process of
yeah,
seeing, "Oh, my parents are human. They have feelings. They can't just provide everything and everything indiscriminately."
mhm,
And as hard as that was to be vulnerable and admit, "I can't do that," and this person can, his dad is well established financially. He has got the extra energy to give the amount of attention that my oldest son needs and benefits from, and
Mhm,
has his parents living right up the road.
mhm.
It's been great for him and for our relationship, and I hope it continues to go that way.
One of the ways that I think you have really killed it in a good way is that you have learned how to regulate your nervous system. And I think this is so key. And we see this with the women in your community when they're spending their first few days without their children, that
Yep.
so much of it has to do with whether or not they have learned to regulate their nervous system. And that's
Mhm.
kind of a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. So, what are some of the ways that you have learned to regulate your nervous system? And this isn't around fear that something bad is going to happen to your child, because we're dealing with this situation where your sons are with a good guy, a good
Yeah,
parent, but you're still maybe activated.
yeah.
What does it look like to regulate your nervous system?
I think one of the biggest keys that both of us benefited from was in coaching, learning about questioning your thoughts. You
Mm,
have to learn that my thoughts are what are activating these feelings. It's not actually the circumstance, it's what I'm making that circumstance mean. This is rooted in Byron Katie's work
mhm.
with questioning and coming to really see reality, understand it's separate from your thoughts about it, and that your thoughts are what are creating all of these feelings inside of you. And then once you understand the feelings, being able to sit with and be with that in your body. And
Mhm.
big aspect that helps with this is doing parts work. I'll often journal and just let those voices that are losing their shit out onto paper.
Yes,
And and
your
when
journaling has been clutch for you
Yeah.
and your
I
parts
can't
work.
do it.
Yeah.
I can't do it all in my mind. If I
Yeah.
just keep trying to, like, I can just feel this. If it gets too dysregulated, it has to be put on paper, and once it's on paper, then I can dialogue with it,
Mhm,
kind of writing back and forth, like, "Tell me more about this," which is parts work style, but just
mhm,
writing. And then, of course, the biggest one has been the CPTSD flashback
mhm.
management. Like, just understanding, "Oh, I am in a flashback. I feel afraid, but I'm not in danger. I'm not going to die. This is a flashback, and what do we need to do for a flashback?" Running through the list that Peak Walker has been instrumental. What about for you, Quinn? Because I know you've had some big dysregulating moments.
Yeah, regulating my nervous system looks like sometimes I give myself a timeout because I always have kids. I'm never without kids other than for a few hours when they're at school. And so sometimes I give myself a timeout where I tell my kids, I'm going to be in my room. You know where I am. I need some time away. And they have no problem giving me that space, or I'll go for a walk. I know that breath work has been important for both of us. I know that you like to like cocoon and be
Yeah,
held. And for me, I want to go to the gym and lift something heavy, or I want to turn up music really loud and stomp and jump and scream, like move the energy out of
yeah,
me. But I do it in such a way that it's not like punching a wall. It's like mom is doing this for the purpose of regulating herself. So it's not dysregulating for everybody around me.
yes.
And learning more about vagal nerve stimulation, humming,
Tapping.
meditation. Yeah, I think that is really key as well. There's so many somatic practices that we can do and show our children. So now my children, I mean, I've had situations where my ex has been violent with me in front of my children, especially one child, and helping her breathe and hold her while she shakes.
Yep,
Those are skills she knows how to do because she's watched her mother do them. And
yep,
this isn't just learning to regulate your nervous system around custody issues, it's about life because life can be really dysregulating, separate
yes.
from custody. but I think it's also important what you said earlier, that it's your job to regulate your nervous system. It is not your child's job to regulate, or your child's job to reassure you that they're going to be okay. It's your
Mhm.
job to reassure them you're going to be okay and I've got your back.
Yeah.
And I think it's important, like you said, with Byron Katie's work, I think one of her prime questions is, who would I be without this thought? Or
Yep.
how would I feel without this thought? So if the thought is, I am biologically wired to my child, this is agony to not be with them 24/7. Who would you be without that thought? And as
Mhm.
I ask myself that question, I feel this immediate physical release because I can choose to believe something else.
Yeah, and right after that, in Byron Katie's work, at the end, there's a turnaround, which becomes where you
Mhm.
take that thought and you turn it to something else, which is what we were doing in this episode, where we're saying, like, instead of thinking your children apart from you are going to be so harmed, apart from me, they are going to learn independence. They are going to learn self trust. This is where you reframe. Because if we don't
Mhm.
reframe, we walk ourselves mentally into double binds
Yes.
where you are fucked either way. If
Mhm.
you stay in your marriage, your mental health is going to deteriorate because you're married to someone you don't want to be married to, but you get to be with your kids all the time. And if you but if and so you're like, "Well, that's not a win-win, but if I leave, then my children don't get to be with me all the time, or they have to be alone with their dad, and that's not a win-win." And so we get stuck in this, that's why we stay in considering divorce for so many years, because often our minds have created a double bind where it's a
Mhm.
loss one way or it's a loss a different way, and we just can't pick who's gonna suffer.
Yeah, and the truth is everyone is. Whether you
Mhm.
stay married, whether you get divorced, have children, don't have children, you get to suffer. And the reality is when you get divorced, for most of us, the other parent is gonna have the kids some of the time.
Mhm.
And the moms who don't have a co-parent, that is suffering as well, a different
Yeah,
flavor. But you can either fight it and resist it and fear it, or you can see it as what it is or what it has been for me, which is a chance to grow, both
yeah.
for me, for my children, for my husband. We all get to grow through this. But avoiding suffering, that's not even
No.
an option. It's
It's a
not on the
part
menu.
yeah, and this is understanding when I say, it's hard either way.
Yeah.
There's no we get stuck in the middle when we're like, "I've gotta pick a way where it's not gonna be hard." No, it's gonna be hard.
Mhm.
It's just which is the hard that actually builds to something you want long term. You have to think
Yeah.
in the long game.
Yeah.
And when you zoom out, there's the perspective that you need.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that the community does beautifully is that a lot
Oh
of
my
people
god,
can relate.
yes.
You get to talk to women who have walked through this. And so they can say, yes, it really hurts. And there are some positive things. And you can develop these beautiful bonds with your children. And sometimes the father steps up and you get to explore who you are. So it doesn't just stop at the agony, it goes
Yeah.
on to the ecstasy.
Yes, and the other huge, like, piece that I love in the community is that because of the way I have built the community, it is absolutely also a place where we're with you, though, in the hard.
Yeah.
It that is the whole there is a cost. I
Yeah.
In the decision of divorce, there is a price that you pay, and I'm not gonna lie to you and say, for those of you that have nervous systems like Quinn that
Hmm.
are very maternally attached to your children. I mean, I have a client right now, a one-on-one client, who we have just circled around this and back to this over and over and over again of how much she wants to be with her children every single day and
Yeah.
misses them when she's not. And
Yeah.
so that is a cost that she's going to be paying that I didn't pay in the same way. I'm paying it in different ways because there's a hard for everybody, but that wasn't the exact hard in my instance, and I love that in the community there is space for all of that. In
Mhm.
acknowledging, yes, that there are benefits that come out, there are ways we can see things differently, that's the coaching aspect, and also just processing when the
Yeah.
cost of what you're going through is just hard.
Yeah. And like we started to talk about at the beginning, where there's this spectrum of maternal attachment, there's a spectrum of hard, and your hard is very specific to you.
Mhm.
And it's okay that it's hard. It's okay. Like, I know, and I even saying that, I don't wanna make it sound trite because
Uh,
sometimes it's so hard it takes your breath away for
ah,
you, and we're here for it. Maybe that's a better way of saying
I
it.
love it. And I
We're
think
here for it.
hopefully those of you that have listened to the podcast for a long time and know Quinn's story, know me, know that when we say we're here for the hard, that is not trite in the fucking least.
Yeah.
The women in my community that interact with us often, that know, you know, they know we get it and we are not here to it's such a balance that we are constantly negotiating in our
Mhm.
episodes, in the way we coach of, yes, bringing in the aspect of you have this incredible superpower with your brain to choose again what you want to think and how you want to feel and to not add additional suffering
Mhm.
by keeping beliefs like we're biologically wired that literally create agony in your body above and beyond what you're already feeling. So there's that
Yeah.
aspect. But then there's also the just like baseline aspect of sometimes life doesn't go the way we thought it was going to go. And we are faced with very difficult decisions,
Mhm.
decisions that often we are the only emotional adult in the room making.
God, I hate that so much.
And that is tough. It is tough. And welcome to the club. It does, like you always say,
Yeah.
it doesn't seem to be a glitch.
It's
It
a
seems to be a
feature.
feature
It's
of
a feature.
what being a human, at least in this time of humanity,
Yeah.
where, and especially if you are a woman at this
Mhm.
time in the world where women have had these rights that have expanded our versions of ourselves, what we want for our lives, what we want in partnership, we are being faced with very difficult decisions.
Mhm.
And it was difficult for the women back then that didn't even get the choice to make a decision. You know, I'm like,
Right?
welcome.
It gets to be hard.
It gets it get it and it, it thinks so much it keeps reminding me of Glennon Doyle's podcast, We Can Do Hard Things. Like,
Yeah.
the hard what's that baseball movie where he's like, "The hard is what makes it great?" I've been recently trying to understand a little bit more of that part of me that's like, it's A League of
Mm.
Their Own, where
Oh.
she's like,
Mhm.
"It's just so hard." And he's like, "Yeah, if it was easy, everybody would do it. Like, the hard is what makes it great." And you and I know that, Quinn.
Mm.
If you were to ask us today to give up our life and go back and do something that would be easier,
Mm.
but we wouldn't get to be who we are right now, we'd say no, wouldn't you?
And if by easier you mean remarried, that's a hell no. Because that I thought divorce would be hard, but now from this perspective, I would never go back. I would choose this hard. I would choose this hard for my kids. I love my kids.
Yep.
I adore my kids. I want my kids with me, and they have become better people by growing through this
Yep.
as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, B, I think we've
Yeah, so y'all,
talked a long time.
we we are looking at the timestamp on this episode and we are like, "Whoa, there is no way we are gonna be able to cover, the second piece." We actually just, like, paused and chatted about this a second ago. We were like, Quinn was like, "How long is the episode?" I was like, "It's an hour and a half already, and we still haven't done the whole second aspect, which is, what we've talked all about how if you're getting divorced and you have a partner that actually is, quote, a good person, is going to be able to co parent well with you. What do you do if you have someone that you lack trust with? And we've ultimately decided we are going to have to make this a part one, part two.
Again, again, typical, typical.
Typical.
Yeah,
I think going forward, I should have known. I even thought looking at this outline, I was like, this is one hell of an outline. This is going
yeah,
to be unique. And so surprise, we are going to end up putting the second half of the episode. I don't even know it'll be the second half. We just really built out. Like you guys got a lot of the material in this first one. But for part 2, that's where we'll get to dive in because I really do feel like this is a piece where I want to spend a good amount of time because this is the heart of that listener's question is
yeah,
what if though it is with a partner that you don't actually trust or feel safe with and you have your own childhood trauma around people like this and so you don't want to leave your kids with them.
yeah.
That's going to take some time for us to dig into. So, y'all, we love you. This has been amazing.
Mhm.
I feel like we were like sneaking out the door. Like, okay, we'll see you all next week. We are yes, terribly sorry that we started this episode ambitiously thinking we'd get through all of it. And the case is it's just not. We get to change our mind an hour and a
Yeah,
half through.
yeah,
So this will be part 1. Next week will be part 2. And I guess that's just how the universe ordered things.
yeah.
So
And part 2, I'm really excited about because that is my experience. I thought that my spouse was going to be able to be a great dad going forward, and it turned out to be not that. Exactly not that. So, I have a lot of the boots on the ground experience of dealing with him, dealing with a legal system, finding ways to
yeah,
give my children skills that don't frighten them, but prepare them for different situations. And remember, my youngest was 6 when this all kind of hit the fan. So we've got some really great ideas and just actionable things you can do, as well as continued reframes to help you be the strength and the model for your children of staying safe, even if your situation is like mine, where sometimes I physically do not feel safe, and how to deal with that.
yeah, absolutely. I cannot wait to dive into Quinn's. I've gotten to see this from behind the scenes. I've watched you. You did not start out thinking this is how things were going to go.
No.
No.
Surprise!
Surprise!
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to dig into that. I feel like we got to spend a lot of time on my perspective this first round, which I think is important because there are a lot of
Mhm,
women that are in more of a I'm going to lose my role kind of bit that you don't realize, but this is an
mhm.
opportunity in this next episode to really give you the other side, which there's just as many of you in this camp, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and you may not know which camp you're in until you get in.
This is true. You're right. You would have thought you were in camp 1 when we
Mhm.
started and
Yeah,
yeah, ended up in camp 2. So,
yeah.
all right, y'all, that's what we got for you today. We loved getting to spend it with you. I loved getting to spend it with Quinn. Our discussions are
Thanks, babe.
always, ugh, so delicious. And we will see you all next week.
See you
Till
next
then.
week. Bye-bye.
Okay, y'all. I just had to jump back on now that Quinn and I are off of that episode together to just do a little housekeeping and say, y'all, we did not plan that. Although looking back, I'm like, of course. Of course, this is always how our episodes go. They are long, they are in depth, and they are such a like beautiful wild ride. But because of that, that does mean that the part 2 of this discussion between the two of us will end up being next week and will be a subscriber only episode. So, similar to how we started this episode with me being like, I guess the universe wants all of my previous episodes to be open to and, available to the public, to anybody who has access to the podcast through Apple or Spotify. I guess this second part of the episode is meant to be part of our subscriber list only because that is just what showed up today. So if you have not gone and decided to become a paid subscriber to the Stay or Go podcast over on Substack, I obviously can't recommend it enough now, especially because the continuation of this conversation between me and Quinn will now be hosted there. So to do that, you can find the links in our show notes. My assistant will post them there. I just also want to give a huge shout out to everybody who signed up this last week, both free subscribers, paid subscribers, and even my legacy members. Y'all, it has been so touching to get those notifications, to see you guys signing up, to be receiving the tremendous gift of your financial support for the podcast going forward. I'm very excited by this, 2-month special that we have with the launch of the Substack, where you'll be able to get the podcast at $8 a month forever. So signing up for that annual subscription gets you locked in at that $8 a month rate going forward as long as you keep your subscription. And it's been really awesome to see many of you choose that. Also, just a little technical point. Previously, my legacy members were the only ones that were going to end up getting a letter from me in the mail. But there were a few of you that signed up on the annual accounts straight out of the gate. And with that annual account, part of the incentives was that you were going to get access to the podcast archive, which I had originally intended to be putting in only my paid subscribers section. And that has changed this week. So instead, for those of you that signed up early for that, because now, that's changed, I am also going to send you a beautiful little note as well in the mail. Just a little thank you card from me. My founding members, or legacy members as they're called, will get that beautiful Oracle card along with a reading from me, an audio that'll be sent over by email. But some of you will be having my assistant reach out to get your mailing addresses to just send you a little thank you note for still being some of my early people to be like, yes, I'm in, I want this. So I'm really excited to send some of those out today and this week. Also, just another huge reminder, I have not done this the last couple episodes and have been meaning to. Just reminding you all that the community, the 90 minutes, coaching with me one-on-one, all of those resources are here and available to you. I am so proud to have really such an incredible variety of ways to help you, from subscribing to the podcast now, being able to get some of those voice notes that I've been dropping. I've got some more coming out this next week. I've also got a post that I'm working on that'll go on the Substack all about my thoughts around divorcing, quote, the good guy. I'm really excited for you guys to get a taste of my writing. Up until this point in my business, writing really hasn't been a format that you guys have gotten to enjoy me in as deeply as I would like. So Substack's going to really open that up for me. So we've got the podcast, then we've got the community. The community is popping off this month, y'all. Honestly, I just finished up creating the resources that we're going to do for the month ahead. I am so excited for the theme this month. We're going to be talking about orgasmic alchemy. And I'm just going to leave that there for y'all to wonder what on earth we are going to be talking about in the community. This is something I've wanted to teach for a long time, but just have never publicly really talked about or taught. And I'm going to be teaching in the community. And I'm stoked. It zinged through me earlier this week when I was considering what I was going to do this next month. And I couldn't be more excited. This is like a theme this month that I am stoked to get to discuss with all my women in the community. So if that's something you've been wanting to do, you've been considering, this will be a really exciting month to join if that's something you've been, on the fence about. And to do that, you can text stay or go community to 33777. Also, for those of you that have been considering 90 minutes, cannot recommend enough. I had a couple this week where I'm just seeing once again like this is the one-on-one work that creates the connections that get things moving. It really does get you unstuck and empowered to start moving forward and taking the next steps. And then if you are one of my women that has gone on my website, has looked at my one-on-one coaching, is considering it, go for it. I had a new one-on-one client come in this week, and I have just fallen completely in love with her. It is always such a tremendous gift and kind of once in a lifetime opportunity to get to do this work so deeply with my women that can work with me in that way. And it's something I take, super deeply, just the responsibility of that. It's something I'm deeply excited about, and getting to bring on this new client this week, I've been like, wow, I love this. I love getting to be fully engaged with my one-on-one clients, working with them all week long through Voxer, and then meeting with them through our weekly coaching sessions. So if that's something you've been wanting, where you're like, I want a coach that's going to not only help me make this decision, but completely change my life in the process, know that I am the one potentially for you. And go sign up for a alignment and clarity call. That's where we check in. We got to make sure all the vibes are vibing. And if we come off that call feeling it, we'll get to dive in together. So that's what I've got for you all. I am so excited to drop in with Quinn this next week and finish off our part 2 to this episode that will be coming out on Substack. And we'll see you all there. Mwah.